Hi everyone, welcome for this 15-minute talk. We are really pleased to have you all on board. I guess that everyone now knows the concept. The concept is quite simple. We invite one expert every one a day and we ask him 3 questions. So in October, we decided to spend some time regarding the EV market, which is really moving fast right now. Sophia, I'm really pleased to have you on board today. I know that you are a strong believer in electric vehicles, and your job at BP is to help enable mass adoption of electric vehicles. So we have observed recently during the COVID-19 crisis that global auto sales plunge during this time, but electric mobility has remained remarkably resilient. Could you explain a bit this move, Sophia? What happened? How do you explain this post-COVID EV market rebound, whereas auto sales are plunging?
Good morning, bonjour, and thank you for having me on the session. Much appreciated. Okay, so there is a huge pent-up demand for electric vehicles, and much of that demand has not been met to date because we've not had, let's say, enough affordable EVs in the market. No, people don't believe yet that there's enough charging infrastructure, enough vehicles that will get them where they're going, as in their own world. We're seeing dramatic changes in share of new car sales, 10-15% in France and Germany, and in the UK in the last month alone. So it's that pent-up demand, which, even though the overall total market is declining, because people are finally seeing new car models that are meeting their needs, both in terms of affordability, but also what they expect the range of a car to be. But also, as well, they're seeing more incentives from government to enable people to buy and own an electric vehicle. We're seeing it. There is probably about 35 to 50% of people we've seen in research which says they will very likely buy an EV for the next purchase. That's quite high. Yes, the pandemic, of course, is changing attitudes and behaviors in many parts of people's lives. And no doubt it's also impacting the way that people are viewing how we want to move around in the future. And so it's been a very positive move, obviously, especially for people like me who are working in the industry, trying to encourage adoption. It's funny because it used to be, we had a Castrol survey recently which talked about the expected range that people have in their mind for an EV is over 450 kilometers. But actually, in reality, the people only, let's say, drive on average about 40 to 50 kilometers a day. So there's a lot of work that we have to do as an industry to change that perception. But I think the cars and the incentives are also helping to drive that segment in terms of the new car sale market.
So we are more talking here about the consumer. How does BP position itself on the whole EV value chain? I'm thinking about energy production. I'm thinking about EV battery. I'm thinking about the charging network also. How do you ensure that BP is positioned in this whole EV value chain?
Well, if you start with the energy, source of energy, so of course we are an oil and gas company, but more and more the renewable, the energy coming in is important. We have a big equity partnership with a company called Lightsource, which is a big solar power player in the marketplace. We've also just announced a big partnership with Equinor, which is one of the world's leading providers of wind energy. So we are working really on ensuring that the mix of energy coming in has a much bigger renewable component. On the battery technology side, we have partnered, for instance, with a company called StoreDot in Israel to really figure out how do we deliver fast charging, ultra fast charging to customers who buy cars, so that they are not standing at a charging unit for 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes to be able to top up their car and go on. And so that's something which is quite important. I mean, we're working in this space quite a lot. On the charging infrastructure side, not necessarily a hardware manufacturer, but we've partnered, for instance, with a small Californian startup called FreeWire, and we've helped them pivot from a small mobile charging product that they had originally to creating what is the world's first, which is a battery storage and charging unit, which actually can enable a much more cost-effective deployment of charging infrastructure onto gas stations or wherever else that the charging infrastructure is needed. And of course, on the customer side, we have a big business in the UK now. We're expanding our business in Germany and potentially in France soon as well, and that's enabling us to deliver across residential, office, and destination, and also gas stations, a much holistic set of products and services, and convenience products and services that are linked to charging. Because it's not just around charging that people are concerned about, but it's about getting to where they're going as smooth as they can be. And so it's kind of across the value chain that we're looking at in terms of the way we are approaching the market.
Yeah. Coming back to the infrastructure, there is one relevant question I see on the chat tab. Do you use BP existing infrastructure on your existing sites to set up those infrastructure? Because we know that it's clearly an issue. How do you expand these charging networks?
It's a good question. I mean, we have 18,000 gas stations globally, and actually that's a place where people are conditioned to go to stop and fuel their car. And as the households switch from fuel to charging, it's a natural place for people to go. And so that is a very important place for us to build out infrastructure, charging infrastructure, because we know that that's a long-term behavior that people understand. I mean, we're not just doing gas stations only. So we are creating a number of dedicated charging hubs. For instance, in China, we've partnered with the world's biggest ride-hail company, Didi, and we are powering up their electric vehicles on their ride-hail platform by creating lots of dedicated large EV charging hubs, sort of the stuff you're seeing like the Tesla supercharger network. So gas stations are important, but it's not the only customer touch point where you'll see EV charging infrastructure from us in the future.
And regarding the charging network, I was chatting with Neo last week, who's developing, huge infrastructure regarding battery swapping. Is it part of the strategy for BP to also propose this battery swapping to consumers?
In my view, China is a unique market, and that's where Neo has kind of grown up. This idea of having a VIP service where you can go and swap a passenger car battery and be out is quite interest, which I think is lucrative in China. Clearly, I've seen Alton, which is a Chinese startup, which has a taxi service and a battery swapping program that works as well in China. Can it work in Europe and the US? Don't know yet. We haven't yet run big trials with regard to passenger cars, but clearly in two-wheelers and three-wheelers, especially in places like India and elsewhere in Asia and potentially in Latin America, there are opportunities that we're looking at for delivering a much cleaner transport offer for two-wheeler and three-wheelers, where that market is huge compared to, let's say, the rest of the world.
Yeah. And regarding your consumers, we talk a bit about the B2C markets, but we know that in Europe, the B2B segments represent the most sizable market also. So how does BP accelerate this B2B adoption also? And I guess you also developed some new use cases regarding the B2G markets. What is your scope and what is your strategy depending on the type of consumer?
So on the B2G point, we have just announced that we're going to be partnering with a whole host of cities around the world. We've started with Houston and with Aberdeen, because those are two cities that we have deep relationships with. It's an easier test case for us to learn what it is that cities and companies that partner with cities want and need to create a cleaner infrastructure, not just transportation, but energy overall. And so that's quite key for us as part of our the way we want to get to net zero by 2050 or sooner. On the B2B side, yes, I agree completely, Adelaide. It in Europe in particular, it's quite important. So we, as you know, we have a long-standing fuel offer to fleet customers, and so we have deployed already fuel and charge offers to fleet managers across Europe, and that has enabled us to, let's say, keep our fleet managers, because of course many of them are concerned now about how do I electrify my fleet, and then how do I simplify all the business arrangements around keeping those fleets on the road, and especially as fleets become a little less standard. So it used to be just be passenger car fleets, but it's fleets of trucks, of buses, of delivery vehicles, and so it becomes quite complex for the fleet manager. So we have been deploying in the UK and in Germany as well fleet depot solutions for charging and energy management, but also reaching into the fleet driver's home as well to help ensure that they can be ready next morning when they get on the road and with their to-do list, that they're fully charged up. So it's quite complex. We absolutely understand that it's a challenge for fleet managers now, especially as the vehicular park is so complex, and also the charging infrastructure and managing that is quite complex as well. So we have been working hard, but we don't have all the answers. And so part of the reason why I'm happy to be here and have lots of conversations is that we're seeking solutions as well, and ways to make it better, make life better as well for fleet managers.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a couple of minutes to take one more question. Ahmed Genawi from NG was asking how much does BP invest annually in the charging network? Do you have some key figures to deliver during this talk?
It's a good question. I mean, historically, our capital expenditure budget has been about, we've normally spent about $500 million roughly in sort of new energy initiatives, which includes charging infrastructure and everything linked to charging infrastructure. We've just made a commitment that our capital expenditure budget will increase to over $1.5 billion, and that will be used predominantly on new energy initiatives, but predominantly on improving charging infrastructure, and also looking at other fuel pilots and POCs, potentially hydrogen, etc., to enable us to have products and services that meet the evolving customer needs.
Okay, thank you. And is there one areas which is more prioritized for BP now?
It's a good question. I think in the near term, just because how quickly the EV market is exploding, and how countries and governments are forcing the switch over from ICE vehicles to EVs, clearly enabling more and more drivers of all types, fleet or private, to be able to get on the road and stay on the road fully charged is an absolute priority for us, because we know that that's one of the biggest obstacles for people to adopt EVs is that lack of comfort and confidence to be on the road. And so that is a real focus area for us over the next couple of years at least.
Thank you very much, Sophia. If you don't mind, we take one more question to enjoy more interactivity with our participants. What is the profit margin of the energy companies of the charging station today? Difficult question, I think.
Yeah, it's short answer is it depends, and I don't mean to dodge the answer, but it does. The question will always be, you don't really have blue electrons and green electrons and red electrons, you just have electrons. So the base product, you really have to figure out new business models to be able to ensure profit for both company and partners. And so the challenge is always people, for instance, value the time it takes to charge, and so you can add a premium to the type of charging that you offer, but also the extra services that you can give to people, which people will then value, and that's a value-added piece. So I guess I'll answer the question by it's challenging to ensure the same level of profit margin in the short term, but I do see pathways for us to grow the margins longer term. Because a lot of these products and services are delivered digitally or ordered up digitally, that reduces some of the costs, some of the friction costs that you have right now dealing in the physical world, which is where we have been as an oil and gas player for a long time.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Thank you for this 15-minute talk, super precise. I think we've covered plenty of subjects. Do not hesitate to contact us if you want more information regarding BP strategy. I will be pleased to introduce you to Sophia. And I just want to invite you next week. We're going to have a webinar with PSA, with NEO, and with Total to deep dive more regarding this EV value chain. We're going to talk about, of course, car makers. We're going to talk about the battery sector and the infrastructure. And the whole event will be moderated by Deloitte, who support us regarding this topic of the EV markets. I wish you all a nice day. Thank you again, Sophia, for your time. Thank you for those precisions. And do not hesitate to contact us if you want more elements regarding the EV markets and BP strategy.
Thank you. Merci.
Thank you.